Hello everybody, and welcome back to my bookshelf and to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. As you can tell by the title, today we are doing a bit of a book unhaul from my bookshelf, and then I've got a small haul of books that I have acquired over the past while that I can also share with you so that I can put them on my bookshelf. I have got a couple of books already piled up on my bedside table there that I have taken out of my bookshelf as I've read them and realized that I don't want to keep them. So we'll go through them later. We can get onto my bookshelf and take some books out of here. The first, on the very top of my bookshelf, which you cannot see, but I have two books here. One of which I am still borrowing from the bookshop, The Past in Hiding by Mark Roseman, and I still want to read. And then the other one being One Day by David Nichols, which has been on my TBR a couple of months. This was one of the books that I had on my TBR, I think it was in August, when I was trying to read books that I want to get rid of, and just reading them before I get rid of them to see whether I actually would like to get rid of them or not. But to be quite honest with you, I really don't think I'm ever going to read this book, and if I do, it's not going to be now. So I'm going to get rid of this book, and then if I do want to read it, I can just buy it again in the future. But I do not need to be holding on to this book any longer than I have been doing for now. Then we'll go through my shelves one by one. These books I'm all going to keep. These I'm all going to keep. On the top here we've got some non-fiction books that I am borrowing from my dad, other than this one, which I'm keeping. We've got Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, and then The Alchemist. So I really enjoyed that Malcolm Gladwell book that I read, but to be quite honest, this is not really the kind of stuff that I'm interested in anymore. So I think I'm just going to give it back to my dad, because I'm not going to read it anytime soon, and if I do want to read it at some point in the future, my dad still will have them, so I could. This one I don't really care about at all. I would still probably want to read Outliers at some point in the future, but that future point is not now. I'm getting rid of these two books so long. And then these two can go back on top here. Other than that, I'm gonna keep all of these books here. What else do I have here? This is poetry, memoirs, and biographies, and then this is non-fiction, and then books about writing. So those I'm gonna keep, all of those. Then on the bottom, on the middle shelf, we have fiction books, and I think I'm gonna be keeping all of these. The Lost Symbol, I don't think I'm going to read now. Also, it is a tome of a book. It is very large and very heavy. And I'm not, don't want to read a book that's this big and heavy. So this is also a book I'm borrowing from my dad. I'm going to be giving it back to him. And I will find a smaller copy to read sometime in the future. But honestly, this was not high on my TBR anyway, so I don't think I'm going to be missing this one, to be quite honest with you. This should actually not be here, because this is also non-fiction, but it is a big book, and I don't have really space left on my top shelf. So it's living down here. These I'm going to keep. I've read some of them, haven't read others. I'm going to keep them all. And then on the bottom shelf, we've got one book that I'm also going to get rid of, that I'm also borrowing from my dad. It's called The Oregon Experiment. It's a non-fiction book about architecture and city planning, because my dad is a town planner, and so he has books relating to this. But I thought it would be an interesting read, but it has been on my shelf for so long, and I don't know when I'll ever get around to it, so I'm going to give it back to my dad, and then if I do ever want to read it, I can just borrow it from him again. It's kind of hard to film my bookshelf, because it's at a very odd angle, but I'm just going to go through the bottom shelf and see if there's anything else that I want to get rid of, but I don't think so. All of my classics I want to keep, and most of them I also haven't read, so I can't exactly get rid of them. And then I have some more fiction, which I'm also going to be keeping. I have now removed all of the books that I'm going to unhaul from my bookshelf, so now I will go through them with you. So I've got 3 piles of books here of things that I want to get rid of. They are all categorized into different categories. That's what categorization is for. But I'm going to start out with the books that I was borrowing from the bookshop that I work at, that I have read or DNF'd, and I'm going to give back. The first one is Plagues and People by William H. McNeill. Then I also have Ready by David Rico and Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. These are all going back to the bookshop because I do not need them anymore. Then I have a stack of books, this is probably the biggest stack of books that I was borrowing from my dad that I'm now going to give back. As you saw, The Oregon Experiment, The Lost Symbol by Dan Brown, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. This is the book that I read of his that I enjoyed. Then I've also got Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and lastly, Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. So these books, oh, they're large and heavy. These books are all going back to my dad. Next we have the pile of books that I have read or DNF'd that are my own books that I am going to get rid of because I don't want them anymore. As you saw, One Day, I haven't read it, but I don't think I will ever. Then Oligarchy by Scarlett Thomas. This was a really weird book, and I didn't enjoy it that much, so I'm going to get rid of it because I know I'm never going to read it again. Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven. This book was okay, but I also know I'm never going to read it again. Then we've got the first book in the Pillars of the Earth series by Ken Follett. And this book, frankly, is just too big, and also I really don't care, to be quite honest. Sorry to any Ken Follett or Pillars of the Earth fans, but I just don't. This is not my type of book, so I'm not going to read it. And then lastly, we have The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I also don't think, I'm not really in the demographic that this is written for, and I also am not really interested, to be honest, in this book. So I'm going to get rid of it as well. Here's the stack of books that I'm going to be getting rid of. Now, we can move on to the haul portion of this video. So first up, we've got a crinkly bag of books from the bookshop that I work at. I reserved a few books for myself, and I actually went and bought them the other day. So we're going to go through them as best we can. The first one that I have is The Beautiful Indifference by Sarah Hall. This is a collection of short stories. I don't really remember what they're about because I reserved them a long time ago, but they seemed very intriguing to me at the time. I also saw her book How to Paint a Dead Man at the bookshop a long time ago. We have since sold the book, but I was very intrigued by that cover, first of all, and by the title of the book, and I would like to read other things that she's written, even though I have not read anything that she's written, but she intrigues me, so I'm going to be reading her short story collection. I also want to get into short story collections because I don't have any, I think. No, that's not true. I have The London Scene by Virginia Woolf, even though those are not really short stories. But anyway, I digress. We have The Beautiful Indifference. Then the next book I got is Tangerine by Christine Mangan. Mangan? I hope that's how you pronounce her surname. And this is kind of an old Hollywood film star story, But what got me really intrigued is the quote on the front from Joyce Carol Oates that says, "As if Donna Tartt, Gillian Flynn, and Patricia Highsmith had collaborated in a screenplay to be filmed by Hitchcock, suspenseful and atmospheric." And you don't have to tell me anything other than that, because that just tells me all I need to know about this book. So I'm very excited to read this book. I also want to read more books set in sort of old Hollywood kind of thing. After I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I really want to read more books like that, and I feel like this will be something similar. Not quite the same, but similar. We can move on to the books that I got from the charity shop in my town. I went there yesterday with a friend and we got a couple of books each. So here's a little haul of these. The first one is 100 American Poems. I want to read more poetry, so whenever I see a poetry book, I just immediately want to grab it, especially when it's at the charity shop, because they have really interesting things that I feel like you wouldn't find in a normal bookshop anymore. All of these books are a little bit battered, but that's okay, it gives them character. So there's that's the first one. Then I have The Story of an African Farm by Olive Schreiner. If you don't know who Olive Schreiner is, she was a South African writer. I think she lived in the early 1800s, and she is considered one of South Africa's most accomplished writers. More South African literature for me. Yay. Then I've got Fanny Hill, Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure. This one has really seen better days. Part of the cover on the front is gone, but I want to read this book, and I got it at the charity shop, so here I go. And then the last book I got was Women in Love by D.H. Lawrence. And to be quite honest with you, I don't really know what any of these books is about, but I've heard about them a lot, and obviously they are classics, most of them. So I'm intrigued, to say the least. Here is my small haul of books. Ooh, if I could hold them all in my hands. Here's my small haul of books. I'm very excited about these books. I'm very happy to add them to my collection. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. You can also give this video a thumbs up if you did. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are, and I will see you again very soon with another video. Bye.